Member of President Trump's personal staff, a personal assistant, has tested positive for coronavirus. Back with me is CNN senior medical correspondent Elizabeth Cohen. Elizabeth, I just want to get your thoughts on this breaking news. And what questions do you have, as there are a lot surrounding this news coming out?
Kate, the biggest question in my mind is what exactly does a valet do? Never having had one, I don't know. But it sounds like a valet would be close to the president. In other words, the valet is not sort of outside on the grounds. The valet would be inside the living space. So how close did this valet get to the president? You know, another thing that comes up in my mind is that, remember, the White House staff has to go home every night. The White House staff, those folks have families. They have communities. So it is not shocking that someone would have COVID-19 working at the White House. They're not kept in a bubble. They're out in the community. Coronavirus is spreading in the community. This is what can happen.
I'm just looking right here, some reporting from Kate Bennett that's just coming through, that valets in the West Wing, they do not wear masks, according to a White House official telling CNN. Another interesting aspect, because that's, of course, a question as we think about our daily lives and what we have all been told to do to take safe precautions when being out in public and coming back to our families. How that is applied at the White House is another part of this. From what we've learned about the virus, how quickly it spreads, how it can spread, how long it can survive on surfaces. What do you think needs to happen now, as you now have a confirmed case of coronavirus to someone who's very close, gets very close to the president and the vice president?
I mean, certainly if I were working in the White House, I would feel much safer with a mask. I mean, it just makes sense. You know, experts do have a variety of opinions about masks and what they can protect against and can't protect against. But one thing that I hear consistently from expert to expert is, look, if you're in your house alone or just with your immediate family who you're always with, you don't need a mask. If you're taking a walk and nobody's going to be anywhere around you, you don't need a mask. But if you're in a grocery store, wear a mask. If you're out in an enclosed space, wear a mask. We noticed when the vice president went to the Mayo Clinic, everyone except him was wearing a mask. And it wasn't just because it was a hospital, it's because it's an enclosed space and people are near each other. I don't know why in the world you wouldn't wear a mask under those conditions.
And we know that the White House has this rapid Abbott lab test, and that they have been testing the president and the vice president, and they have obviously tested negative for the coronavirus. What is known about the incubation period of the coronavirus, how long is now going to be this window where there could be a real question of if the president or the vice president or anyone else at the White House on the White House staff could be at a higher risk right now?
Right. To your point, Kate, testing in this situation can only go so far. All you know is that that person is not getting a positive test at that moment. They could be incubating the virus, and they could also feel perfectly fine, so they're completely asymptomatic. Just because someone has a negative test doesn't mean that they can't spread the virus. Is it unlikely? Yes, it's unlikely, but it doesn't mean that they don't have the virus. So that's another question that comes to my mind is, did this valet have a test before he entered the White House? And if it was negative, and then it later turned out that he was positive, you know, what does that tell us?
All right, stick with me, Elizabeth. Let me bring Caitlin Collins back in. She's on the phone. Caitlin, maybe to answer the question that Elizabeth led off with in the top, what is known about how close a valet gets to the president and the vice president, the responsibilities of a valet?
Well, that's why this is so notable. They get incredibly close to the president and sometimes the first family, because this is someone who is personally assigned to President Trump. They're this elite military unit. They're assigned to the White House. But the point is, there are many valets. So did this valet interact with other valets who went into the residence, where the First Lady, of course, is? Questions like that are going to be what the White House is asked in the coming hours about this. And, of course, you know, in the West Wing, how much interaction did this person have with the president, with other staffers on the ground? Because we do know from sources telling my colleague Peter Morris and I that this person was on the grounds yesterday. What's still unclear is if they were actually in the Oval Office yesterday or, of course, the days leading up to that. So this is someone who works really closely to the president. They handle their food, their beverages, things of that nature. So that is why we were told by a source that the president was upset when he was informed about this, because obviously he knows this is someone close to him. We should note the White House told us they were both tested after. They both tested negative. That's the president and the vice president. But the other question is what you guys are talking about when staffers come in and they get tested. Oftentimes they're tested in the executive office building next door. So if you're looking at the White House like you are now,
Right.
It's to the right of it. That's where the vice president's office is based, the National Security Council. And oftentimes staffers who get tested come in, they're tested, and basically they're sent on their way, and they're told that they'll get a call in 15 minutes if it's positive. So basically any news is not good news if you have been tested and then you get a call from the medical unit. So often they're not called back, but clearly this person was. We're told they were exhibiting symptoms, so it's not clear which symptoms or if that's what led them to get tested or if they were just being tested because they were on the ground. So a lot of questions about, the president's exposure here.
Yeah, and there's also, we have seen very clearly over the past week plus the sensitivity that the president and the White House in general has to this issue of wearing masks. We saw that with the vice president when he was traveling and with the president as well. The reporting coming in from Kate Bennett is that the valets do not wear masks in the West Wing. I'm wondering now if you're hearing that that could be changing.
Well, so far the calculus on that is, not only do the valets not, most staffers don't wear masks in the West Wing. There's one staffer who's famous for wearing it. It's the Deputy National Security Advisor who's been wearing one for weeks now, basically trying to signal to his colleagues about, the seriousness of this. But most staffers you don't see wearing masks with the president. And so when they go on Air Force One like they did to Arizona this week, the president was saying he felt comfortable because everyone had been tested before they got on the plane. Things like that. But as Elizabeth was saying, the concern is that you could contract this and not know it, and as even the press secretary pointed out yesterday, if people got tested, you'd have to retest them every hour because theoretically you can get the virus at any moment. And so the question is, because this person is so close to the president, does this change their thinking going forward? And if not, how does it not change their thinking going forward? Because obviously the number one concern that people like the Secret Service and the medical unit are going to have is how to protect the president.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a hugely important job and question. But also, I think we need to also ask, is there any update on how this personal assistant, how this person is actually doing?
No update yet. They just said the White House only confirmed when we reached out with this reporting this morning that it is true that someone did test positive, but that's really all we know. So we don't know how the staffer is doing, where they are, if they were just sent home. We really don't have more details on who this individual is, except that they are a male and that they are a valet assigned to the president.